Welcome to the Ghastly Journal. I'm your host, and tonight we explore a tale wrapped in shadow and whispers. The account of a small town named Blackridge and the family that has clutched it for more than 200 years. Imagine, if you can, a town tucked between ancient mountains, where fog grips the valleys like desperate fingers. A place where the sun appears to set a little sooner than it ought to, where the townspeople's smiles never truly touch their eyes. This is Blackridge, population 7,432, established in 1801. And since its very beginning, each and every mayor, without a single exception, has carried the same surname, Blackridge. Coincidence? Maybe. A family legacy? That is what the official town history wants you to think. But sometimes the truth hides in the gaps between what is spoken and what is left unsaid. Our story starts not with the founding of Blackridge, but with me. 3 months ago, a strange package arrived in my mail. No return address. Inside was a leather-bound journal. Its pages were yellowed with age, accompanied by a handwritten note that stated simply, "Someone needs to know." The journal had belonged to Eleanor Wright, a local historian who disappeared from Blackridge in 1998. What I discovered within its pages sent me down a rabbit hole of vanishings, unexplained deaths, and a pattern so unsettling I've barely slept since. Tonight, I reveal to you what I've learned about the Blackridge family, a dynasty founded not on civic duty, but on something much more sinister. A lineage that has preserved its power through methods that defy all logic. But I must caution you, once you learn their secrets, you can never unlearn them. And knowledge, in this instance, may be as much a curse as it is a revelation. So lock your doors, pull your curtains shut, and accompany me as we reveal the macabre history of the Blackridge family. Let's start at the very beginning. The year is 1801, and a man called Thaddeus Blackridge leads a group of settlers to found a new community in a valley rumored to be unusually fertile. Historical accounts depict Thaddeus as a charismatic leader, a man of wealth and learning who had mysteriously abandoned a comfortable life in Boston to begin anew in the wilderness. According to Eleanor Wright's journal, Thaddeus chose the town's location not for its fertile land, as is widely thought, but because of something he called only the convergence. Her notes suggest that before the settlers came, the valley was viewed as forbidden ground by indigenous tribes who thought it to be a thin place, a spot where the veil separating worlds was particularly fragile. The natives cautioned Thaddeus, Eleanor wrote, but he appeared drawn to the valley exactly because of their warnings. I've discovered letters where he expresses feelings summoned to this place as if by voices only he could hear. The founding of Blackridge was plagued by strange hardships. The first winter was severe, with temperatures falling far lower than normal for the area. Food supplies inexplicably rotted. And then came the first vanishing. Mary Holloway, a young woman of 19, disappeared one night in January 1802. The official record states she was taken by wolves. But Eleanor's research revealed a different account. One whispered by descendants of the original settlers. According to them, Mary had been last seen going into Thaddeus Blackridge's home for dinner. She never came out. By spring, Thaddeus had been named the settlement's first mayor by a unanimous vote. Eleanor notes that several settlers who had initially opposed him had either departed the settlement or were among those who mysteriously died during that first winter. A pattern was set in those early days, one that would recur for generations to follow. Blackridge flourished while nearby settlements faltered. The crops grew unbelievably plentiful. The livestock bred beyond reason. And every 7 years, with perfect regularity, someone would vanish without a trace. When Thaddeus died in 1833, his son Elias assumed his role as mayor. Another unanimous vote. And so it went on, generation after generation. A Blackridge dies. Another assumes their position at the town's helm. The prosperity remains, and every 7 years, a disappearance. Eleanor Wright was not the first to see this pattern, but she was likely the most meticulous in her recording. Her journal includes census data, newspaper articles, and personal stories spanning almost 2 centuries. She charted each disappearance, each death, each unexplained event onto a timeline that shows a frightening precision to these occurrences. There is a design here, she wrote. A dreadful symmetry that cannot be accidental. The Blackridge family keeps its hold on this town through some pact or ceremony that demands a periodic sacrifice. I think I've discovered the place where these rituals occur, and tomorrow night, I plan to see it for myself. That was the last entry in Eleanor's journal, dated April 17, 1998. She was declared missing 3 days later. Now, I should state that I began this investigation with skepticism. Supernatural pacts, ritual sacrifices. It sounded like the storyline of a horror novel, not historical reality. But as I started to verify Eleanor's sources, to confirm her timeline, I found I could not disregard her findings. The town of Blackridge exists. The Blackridge family has indeed supplied every mayor since its founding. And the pattern of disappearances every 7 years with perfect regularity is backed by police files, newspaper records, and missing persons reports. Furthermore, I discovered something Eleanor had not. A geographical oddity. Using satellite images and topographical maps, I found that Blackridge lies at the heart of a perfectly geometric pattern created by 7 surrounding peaks. This formation is so exact it simply cannot be natural. I decided I had to see Blackridge for myself. 3 weeks ago I drove up the twisting mountain road that leads to this secluded community. What I found was a town that appears stuck in time, picturesque to an almost eerie degree, like a postcard from another age. Main Street is filled with well-kept Victorian buildings. The town square has a statue of Thaddeus Blackridge, his stone gaze seeming to follow you as you walk by. And at the town's north end stands Blackridge Manor, the ancestral home that has held every mayor for over 2 centuries. The present mayor, Sylvia Blackridge, is a woman in her late 50s with striking white hair and the same piercing gray eyes seen in paintings of her ancestors. I scheduled an interview under the guise of writing a piece about historic small-town governance. Mayor Blackridge was courteous but cautious. She talked of family tradition and public service, of her ancestors' dedication to the town's prosperity. When I inquired about the disappearances, her manner shifted subtly, a tightening around her eyes, a slight chill in her tone. Every town has its tragedies, its urban legends, she told me. Blackridge has been lucky in many respects, but we've had our portion of grief. I would advise you against putting too much stock in local superstitions. They make for good stories, but they can take attention from the genuine history of our community. As I exited her office, I spotted a calendar on her secretary's desk. April 17, 2025, was circled in red. Today is exactly 7 years since the last disappearance in Blackridge, a hiker who wandered off the trails and was never seen again. I checked into the Blackridge Inn, a bed and breakfast operated by a couple named Harris who have lived in the town for only 5 years. Newcomers, by local measures. Over dinner, they relayed what they knew of the town's history, a cleaned-up version that omitted any mention of disappearances or the unusual nature of the mayoral succession. But later that night, as I was heading back to my room, I heard Mrs. Harris on the phone, her voice strained. "He's asking questions about the Blackridge family." "No, I didn't tell him anything." "Yes, I know what happens to people who speak. We'll be visiting my sisters for the weekend as you recommended." The next morning, the Harris couple told me they had a family emergency and would be shutting the inn for a few days. They proposed I prolong my stay at the only other lodging in town, a small motel on the outskirts. Instead, I chose to use the chance to investigate. My first stop was the local library, where I hoped to locate more of Eleanor Wright's research. The librarian, an older man named Parker, became visibly uneasy when I brought up Eleanor's name. Eleanor was troubled, he told me. Brilliant, but troubled. She grew fixated on old legends. Spent too much time by herself in the archives. Started noticing patterns that didn't exist. It's a shame what became of her. When I asked what precisely had happened to her, Parker said she had moved away abruptly, leaving no new address. This conflicted with the police report I had located, which stated she had been officially filed as a missing person. Parker made an excuse and went into a back room. I took the opportunity to look through the local history section, but found it oddly limited. There were volumes about the town's architectural history, its economic growth, biographies of notable citizens, but nothing that provided a full history of the Blackridge family itself. As I was preparing to leave, I saw a door labeled Archive Staff Only. Glancing around and spotting no one, I slipped inside. The archives were vast. Row after row of shelves loaded with boxes, filing cabinets against the walls, microfiche readers coated in dust, and in the room's center, a table where someone had been working. Recently, the materials spread out were newspaper stories about disappearances in Blackridge spanning decades. Next to them was a map like the one Eleanor had made, marking incidents across time. And in a notebook, recent handwriting. Someone was carrying on Eleanor's work. I swiftly photographed everything and exited through a side door just as I heard Parker coming back. Back on the street, I felt eyes on me from windows, from cars driving past, from pedestrians who seemed to stop just a moment too long as they passed by. That afternoon, I went to the local historical society, located in one of the town's oldest buildings. The curator, a young woman named Meredith Chambers, seemed genuinely eager to share Blackridge's history until I started asking detailed questions about the family. The Blackridges have always been extremely private people, she said. The majority of their personal documents and belongings stay at the manor. What we have here are mainly public records, speeches, official announcements, photos from civic events. When I brought up the pattern of disappearances, Meredith's look shifted from helpful to wary. I believe you should be cautious about the type of story you're trying to write, Mr. Sullivan. Blackridge is a tight-knit community. We take care of our own, and we don't like outsiders coming here to dramatize tragedies for clicks and views. She knew my name. I hadn't given her my name. As I left the historical society, I noticed a black sedan parked across the street. The same car had been near the library earlier. I chose to walk back to the inn by a roundabout path through residential streets bordered by pristine Victorian houses. Halfway back, I realized the car was trailing me from a distance. I slipped into a coffee shop and watched through the window as it drove slowly past. The driver was a man in a dark suit, his face hidden by the tinted windows, but I could feel his gaze on me. The coffee shop was named The Daily Grind. As I ordered, I casually asked the barista how long the place had been open. "Oh, forever," she chuckled. "Well, since I was a kid, anyway. My mom used to take me here for hot chocolate after school. It's sort of a Blackridge institution." I mentioned I was looking into the town's history and her face lit up. "You should speak with my grandfather. He's lived here his entire life, 92 years now. Knows all the old tales. He's always grumbling that the younger generation doesn't care about saving the town's real history." She wrote down an address for me. Raymond Cooper, 414, Maple Street. I thanked her and left, ensuring the black sedan was gone before I went in that direction. Raymond Cooper lived in a simple bungalow on a calm street lined with maple trees. He was certainly elderly, but his eyes were keen and his mind keener. When I said I was investigating the Blackridge family, he invited me in immediately. His living room walls were covered with pictures of Blackridge over the decades. He offered me tea and sat in a worn armchair by the window. "I've been expecting someone to ask the proper questions," he said. "Eleanor was the last one who did. We were friends, you know. I assisted her with her research when I could." Raymond verified what Eleanor had recorded. The pattern of disappearances, the strange prosperity of the town, the unbroken line of Blackridge mayors. My father attempted to run against Conrad Blackridge in 1953. He told me a week before the election, my little sister vanished. Just disappeared from the playground after school. The police chief, Conrad's cousin, proposed that my father drop out of the race to concentrate on the family crisis. He did. My sister was never located. Raymond's hands trembled as he showed me a photo of a smiling little girl in pigtails. The pattern isn't only about the disappearances every 7 years. There's another pattern. Anyone who challenges a Blackridge loses something dear. Always, without exception. He took out a box from under his sofa. Inside were countless newspaper clippings, letters, diaries, materials that Eleanor had missed or hadn't been able to access. Raymond had been gathering proof for decades. Eleanor discovered something in the woods north of town. He told me, something that verified her worst fears. She phoned me the night before she disappeared. Said she finally had evidence of what the Blackridge family was truly doing. She was going to meet me the next morning to show me. She never came. Raymond showed me a hand-drawn map where Eleanor had marked a spot deep in the forest. According to her notes, it was the location of an ancient stone circle that predated European settlement of the area. Local indigenous legends described it as a gateway to the spirit realm. Thaddeus Blackridge didn't just stumble upon this valley, Raymond clarified. He came searching for this specific spot. There are letters, I've seen copies, where he writes to European occultists about a ritual site in the New World that could give immense power to whoever commanded it. The ritual, according to Raymond, required blood sacrifice at set intervals. The prosperity of Blackridge, its plentiful crops, its thriving livestock, its unusually good health was bought with human lives. But that's not the most horrifying part. He whispered. The sacrifices aren't just for maintaining prosperity. They're for maintaining the Blackridge line itself. At that moment, Raymond's phone rang. He answered, listened for a moment, and his face lost all color. You need to go now. That was my neighbor. There's a black car parked down the street and men watching my house. They know you're here. He hastily copied Eleanor's map for me and shoved it into my hand along with a key. This is to Eleanor's cabin in the woods. She left it with me for safekeeping. Whatever she found, whatever proof she had, it might still be there. Leave now, out the back door, and be careful. The 17th is only 2 days away. I slipped out through Raymond's backyard, moving through several properties before reaching the main road. The inn was obviously not safe to return to. Instead, I drove out of town, finding a motel about 20 miles away, where I spent a sleepless night going over everything I had learned. The next morning, I went back to Blackridge via a back road and left my car at a trailhead shown on Raymond's map. The path to Eleanor's cabin was overgrown, hinting that no one had used it in years. The cabin itself was small and worn, almost swallowed by the surrounding forest. The key Raymond had provided still worked, though the door groaned as I pushed it open. Inside, a heavy layer of dust covered everything. A small kitchen, a desk, a bed with a now rotting mattress. Nothing seemed to have been touched since Eleanor's disappearance 27 years ago. I started searching carefully, looking for any hidden spot where Eleanor might have kept her evidence. Under a loose floorboard near the desk, I found a metal box. Inside was a journal, newer than the one sent to me, and a small cloth bag. The journal held Eleanor's final entries, her finding of the stone circle, her notes on what looked like preparations for a ritual, her intentions to document it the night she vanished, and most alarmingly, her understanding of what the Blackridge family actually was. They are not human, she wrote, or not completely. Thaddeus Blackridge made a pact with something ancient that lives below the stone circle. Every 7 years they feed it, and in return it guarantees the family line continues, not through normal birth, but through a kind of possession. According to Eleanor's research, each Blackridge mayor seemed to age normally until close to their death. Then they would pick a town citizen. Always someone with no close family. Always someone who wouldn't be quickly missed. This person would disappear and soon after the elderly Blackridge would die. The next Blackridge in line would assume office, seeming to inherit the role. But they are all the same being, Eleanor wrote. The same consciousness transferring from body to body for over 200 years. Thaddeus never died. He just continued in a new form. The eyes reveal it. Always that same piercing gray, no matter the host body's original color. The cloth bag held a small object wrapped in silk. When I unwrapped it, I found myself holding an unusual stone figurine that looked incredibly old. It showed a human-like figure with long limbs and a blank face except for deeply carved eyes. Eleanor's notes said she had taken this artifact from the stone circle, an act of defiance she believed might interrupt the ritual. Perhaps this was why she had been targeted. The final entry in the journal provided the exact location of the stone circle and Eleanor's plan to document the ritual scheduled for April 17, 1998. 7 years before, 7 years after that, and now 7 years after the last disappearance, April 17, 2025. Today, I understood what I needed to do. Eleanor had tried to reveal the truth and had lost her life. Raymond had spent years collecting evidence, but was too afraid to act openly. Now the task was mine to record what was happening in Blackridge and bring it into the open. I collected Eleanor's journal and the stone figurine along with my camera and recording gear. The stone circle was clearly marked on her map, about a mile further into the forest from the cabin. The day was fading as I hiked through the thickening woods. The light took on a strange quality, not just the gold of late day, but something almost green, as if filtered through some unseen substance. The temperature fell noticeably as I neared the coordinates marked on Eleanor's map. The forest had gone quiet, no birdsong, no sound of small creatures, just my own breathing and footsteps. And then I saw it. A perfect circle of standing stones, each about waist high, set in a clearing that looked unnaturally perfect. The grass within the circle was a bright green despite the early spring, while the surrounding forest floor was still covered in last autumn's dead leaves. I set up my camera on a tripod at the clearing's edge, hidden by undergrowth. Then I settled down to wait, the stone figurine heavy in my pocket. As the sun began to set, I noticed a soft glow coming from the center of the stone circle. Not light reflecting off anything, but a phosphorescence rising from the ground itself. The air felt electric, like the instant before lightning. Then came the sounds of people approaching, muted voices, footsteps, the occasional snap of a branch. I pressed myself lower, making sure my camera was still recording. Into the clearing walked a procession of figures in dark clothes. Leading them was Mayor Sylvia Blackridge, dressed in a formal black suit. Behind her came what seemed to be most of the town's important citizens, the police chief, the librarian Parker, the historical society curator Meredith, and at least a dozen others. Last in the procession was a young man I recognized as the barista's helper from the daily grind. Unlike the others, his movements were rigid, his expression blank. Two larger men flanked him, leading him forward. The group positioned themselves around the edge of the stone circle. Mayor Blackridge stepped into the center where the glow was brightest. Her shadow stretched unnaturally long behind her despite the dying light. For 224 years, we have upheld the covenant, she chanted. For 224 years, we have prospered. The time has come again to honor our pact and ensure our continued blessing. The gathered townspeople began a low chant in a language I didn't know. The young barista was brought forward, still seeming dazed and unaware of his surroundings. Mayor Blackridge raised her arms, and the glow from the ground grew stronger. Her shadow started to move on its own, stretching and twisting into a shape no longer human. What happened next defies all reason. The air within the circle seemed to fold in on itself, creating a distortion through which I saw something immense and ancient and completely alien, and it was reaching through this rift toward the young man. I wish I could say I stepped in, that I rescued him somehow. But the truth is, I was frozen in fear. All I could do was keep recording as the entity, for lack of a better term, swallowed the young man. He didn't scream. He didn't fight. He just dissolved, his form becoming faint and then gone completely. The rift closed, the glow dimmed. Mayor Blackridge fell to her knees, her body shaking. The assembled townspeople continued their chant, now in a tone that sounded almost calming. When Sylvia Blackridge stood again, her movements were different, awkward, as if she were unfamiliar with her own body. And her eyes had changed. They now had the empty, hollow look I had seen in the young barista's eyes. But the most frightening change was in the elderly woman standing just outside the circle, Sylvia's aunt, Evelyn Blackridge, who had been mayor before her. Where her eyes had once been that distinctive Blackridge gray, they were now a muddy brown, and her expression was one of total confusion, as if she had just woken from a long dream. The true horror of the ritual became clear to me then. The entity that had possessed the Blackridge line for generations had moved from Sylvia to the young barista. But something had gone wrong. Instead of claiming him entirely, it had been pulled back to Sylvia, and whatever had possessed Evelyn all those years had been forced out, leaving her suddenly truly herself for the first time in decades. My movement betrayed me. Evelyn's head turned toward me, her newly brown eyes widening in recognition. Not of me, but of the situation she suddenly found herself in. "Help me," she mouthed silently. Then chaos broke out. The police chief yelled, pointing in my direction. The assembled townspeople turned as one, their expressions changing from solemn ritual observance to something more primitive. Rage, fear, bloodlust. I grabbed my camera and ran, bursting through the underbrush with no thought for stealth. Behind me, I could hear them chasing, their voices calling to each other as they fanned out through the forest. I reached Eleanor's cabin and barricaded the door, my mind racing. The evidence was on my camera. The ritual, the disappearance, whatever unearthly thing lived under Blackridge. But I was miles from my car, surrounded by hostile townspeople who had just taken part in what was essentially a human sacrifice. As I desperately weighed my options, I noticed the stone figurine I had taken from Eleanor's hiding place. It was warm now, almost hot, and the carved eyes seemed to be crying. A dark liquid seeped from the eye sockets, dripping onto the cabin floor. Outside, I could hear voices getting closer. They knew where I was. It was only a matter of time before they broke in. That's when I saw Eleanor's final journal entry, a part one had missed in my earlier rush. If you are reading this and I am gone, know that the figurine is the key. It is a piece of the entity itself, made solid in our reality. It can open the door between worlds, but it can also seal it if taken back to the center stone and shattered there. The circle will fall apart, the connection broken, but the cost is high. Whoever does this will be pulled through as the door shuts. I am ready to pay that price tomorrow night. Eleanor had planned to sacrifice herself to end the Blackridge curse for good, but she had never reached the ritual site with the figurine. Had she been caught on the way or had she lost her nerve? The choice was made for me as the cabin windows broke. The police chief's voice called out, commanding me to give up. I clutched the camera in one hand, the figurine in the other, and climbed out through a back window as they smashed down the front door. The forest was now totally dark, but I knew the way to the stone circle. I ran blindly, chased by shouts and flashlight beams slicing through the trees behind me. When I got to the clearing again, I was stunned to find Evelyn Blackridge there, alone, standing at the circle's edge. She turned as I burst from the trees, her expression a mix of terror and resolve. "I remember everything now," she said. 50 years of watching through my own eyes as something else controlled my body. 50 years of silent screaming. "You have the figurine, don't you?" Eleanor told me about it before they took her. Behind us, the voices were getting nearer. Evelyn grabbed my arm with surprising strength for a woman her age. "There isn't much time. The ritual failed tonight. The entity is unstable, trapped between Sylvia and the boy. This is our only opportunity to end it for good." She held out her hand for the figurine, but I paused. Eleanor's words echoed in my mind. Whoever sealed the doorway would be pulled through it. I couldn't ask this woman who had already lost so much to sacrifice herself. "I'll do it," I told her, pushing the camera into her hands instead. "Take this. Get to my car. It's at the North Trail head. The keys are under the front wheel well. Get this evidence out. Make sure the world knows what happened here." They won't let me leave alive. She said, you know that. I've been their captive for 50 years. Let me choose my own ending. Before I could protest further, the first of the townspeople burst into the clearing. The police chief, his gun out. Behind him, Sylvia Blackridge moved with that same jerky, unnatural walk, her eyes now completely black. Evelyn snatched the figurine from my hand and rushed into the center of the stone circle. The ground began to glow again, reacting to the artifact's presence. Run, she shouted at me. Get the camera out. Tell our story. As the police chief fired and Sylvia released an inhuman scream, Evelyn Blackridge slammed the figurine down hard against the center stone. It broke with a sound like a thunderclap, and the air itself seemed to rip open. What came out of that rift defies description, a twisting mass of shadow and light, of angles that shouldn't exist in our three-dimensional space. It reached for Sylvia, who was now convulsing on the ground, black fluid streaming from her eyes and mouth. Evelyn stood in the center of the maelstrom, her arms wide, her face calm despite the chaos around her. As the entity thrashed and reached for her, she looked straight at me one last time and nodded. I ran. The camera held tight to my chest. I ran as the very ground seemed to warp and shake behind me. The screams of the townspeople were overwhelmed by a sound like the universe itself tearing apart. I didn't stop until I reached my car. The forest behind me had gone utterly silent. No pursuit, no voices, nothing but an unnatural quiet. As I drove away from Blackridge, I looked in my rearview mirror and saw a pillar of eerie light shooting up from where the stone circle had been, piercing the night sky like a beacon. That was 3 weeks ago. I've been in hiding since then, reviewing the footage, organizing Eleanor's research, and preparing this account. The video from that night is problematic. Much of it is distorted, as if the camera struggled to capture what it was seeing. But there's enough to support this story, enough to raise serious questions about what occurred in Blackridge. I've tried to find news about Blackridge since that night. There was a small article about a sinkhole appearing in the forest north of town, forcing several homes to be evacuated. Nothing about missing persons, nothing about the ritual or its participants. But when I called Raymond Cooper's number, a stranger answered, claiming they'd had the phone number for years. When I tried to find Blackridge on recent maps, I found that officially it no longer exists. The area is now listed as part of the next county with no town marked. It's as if Blackridge is being methodically erased from records, from memory, from reality itself. Perhaps without the entity tying it to our world, the town itself is fading away. Or perhaps something is concealing what happened there. I'm releasing this account and the accompanying evidence publicly because I don't know how much longer I have. Twice now, I've spotted a black sedan like the one in Blackridge. Once I thought I saw Meredith from the Historical Society on a street corner watching my apartment, and last night I dreamed of the stone circle, of a voice calling me back to finish what was started. If you're watching this and something happens to me, the complete files, Eleanor's research, Raymond's evidence, my footage have been given to multiple sources with instructions to release everything if I disappear. The Blackridge family held a town in its grip for over 2 centuries. Every mayor bore their name. Every 7 years, someone vanished. And under it all was a pact with something ancient and hungry. Something that wore human skin like a costume. Is it truly gone? I want to believe that Evelyn's sacrifice sealed the rift forever. I want to believe that whatever lived beneath Blackridge has been sent back to whatever realm it came from. But sometimes in the moments before sleep takes me, I feel a presence, patient, ancient, watching, and I wonder if perhaps the entity didn't die that night. If perhaps it simply moved. Check your local history. Look for patterns of prosperity amid unexplained disappearances. Watch for those distinctive gray eyes moving from person to person across generations. And if you live in a small town where every mayor has carried the same surname for as long as anyone can recall, well, perhaps it's time to ask yourself what price you're paying for your community's good fortune. This is the Ghastly Journal. Sleep well if you can.